Hey, everybody, it is Evan Grant, your friendly neighborhood Rangers insider, coming to you live. Actually, I'm taped from New York. But, I think a lot of the shows that they say are coming to you live from New York are actually taped in front of a studio audience. We don't have any audience here, just the sun. Let's move the camera. Thank you. These are all the things I'm learning in professional influencer school. So I get my degree in content creation and influencing. Anyway, I am here. You know me. I'm with the Dallas Morning News, dallasnews.com, all our affiliated outlets, and regular guy who covers the Rangers, who woke up the start of this week, not in first place for the first time since April 8th. As I record this, though, they have rectified that. There is now a three-way tie atop the American League West. After the Rangers' 2-week free fall, they gathered themselves with consecutive wins against the Mets. Seattle lost on Tuesday night. Houston won again to forge a three-way tie atop the West. And I've got your tiebreaker scenarios all laid out for you. You can find them on our dallasnews.com website, written out, so that if you, like me, are slow when it comes to comprehending, you can spend as much time as you want on the explanation. Where in here we move fast. We're all over the place. Anyway, the what you need to know is in a three-way tie situation right now, it favors the Rangers. The idea of the three-way tiebreaker is basically to eliminate one team and then go to a two-team tiebreaker. In this scenario right now, and look, there's a month left of baseball to play. A lot's going to change, especially since the Mariners and Rangers play each other all head-to-head, as do the Astros. But right now, the three-way tiebreaker, because the Rangers have a better record against the Mariners have a better record against Houston, and Houston has a better record against the Rangers. You then go to looking at their combined records against one another. If one of those teams had a better record against the other two in head-to-head, then that would be your front runner. However, the Rangers and Seattle both have 9-7 records against the three teams in the tie. Houston is 8-12. So by that, Houston would be eliminated from the division hunt. The Rangers in Seattle would then be in a tie. The Rangers currently, though they have 7 more games remaining against the Mariners, the Rangers currently lead that season series 5-1. So it favors the Rangers. If they can win 2 of those next 7 games in the final week of the season, or the final 2 weeks of the season, the Rangers will hold that tiebreaker if those two teams end up in any kind of two-way tie. So that explains the three-way tie scenario, and it also explains how the Rangers would fare right now in a head-to-head tie with Seattle. The bad news, the Rangers are 4-6 against Houston. They've got 3 games against Houston in Arlington starting on Labor Day Monday. Biggest series as the Rangers have played in Globe Life Field since it's been open. Houston leads that series 6-4. The only way the Rangers can win the tiebreaker with the Astros for the year, should a two-way tie in anything arise, is to sweep the series. Otherwise, any two-way tie between the Rangers and Astros favors the Houston Astros. So I hope that explains something to you about the tie-breaking situation. It can get deeper, but I think with the scenarios that I've laid out, that's all of the most realistic possibilities. So what else do we have to talk about today? Well, September 1 is just around the corner. Probably as you're watching this may be September 1, which is when rosters can expand by 2, one of whom can be a pitcher, no more than one. You can go with 2 position players, but you can't go with more than one pitcher. I take that back. I'm not sure if you can go with 1-1 or if you can go with 2 position players and their pitchers, or if you have to go with 1-1. Either way, the long-term plan for the Rangers is that Josh Young would still be activated before the end of the season. The Rangers hope between 10 and 14 days remaining from his fractured thumb, and that Nathan Eovaldi, who is supposed to throw a bullpen on my out in Citi Field when I get out there this afternoon on Wednesday, will also be activated. Now, certainly there could be other moves that come, but those would be ultimately the 2 long-term nets that the Rangers would like to get. Those are 2 pretty good nets. Pair of all-stars, guy who was contender for Rookie of the Year, guy who was contender for Cy Young when they both went down. So those are huge September additions. But in the meantime, the Rangers could look at a lot of different things. And listen, this is a team in a much different situation than it has been for a long time. And so the September call-ups are going to be about guys who can help this team win a game. And yes, if Evan Carter can help this team win a game, even though he's just turned 21, and even though he was promoted to AAA Round Rock only on Tuesday, sure, he could be in the mix. He could be in the mix. He does what the Rangers would probably need from an extra player. He can play defense, can play all 3 outfield positions, runs well, can get on base. The Rangers' position player needs are these at the moment. A guy who could be an everyday left fielder if they could find one. But other than that, it would be to potentially fit into that left field rotation, play some defense for, a Robbie Goldman late, and to run, to run for a catcher, run for Robbie Grossman. My God, Evan.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really.
It's Robbie Grossman. I've only covered him all year. Goodman, Goldman, Grossman. Age is a hell of a thing, people. Anyway, so the position player needs are not huge, and they shouldn't be for a team that's in a playoff race. But I think whether or not Evan Carter needs to be put on the 40-man roster this winter, if the Rangers feel like he can help them win a game better than JP Martinez, or better than Elier Hernandez, or better than calling up Jonathan Ornelas, and they feel like Carter will legitimately fight for an outfield spot in 2024, that's a secondary thought, though. I think they would consider moving him up. He's going to go and play at Round Rock for the next week or however long, and then the Rangers will revisit that perhaps. We'll see what happens there. The other wild card in all of that is that on Tuesday, the Los Angeles Angels, out of the playoff race now and with their season completely done, have decided to basically put all their free agents, except for Shohei Ohtani, all their impending free agents, except for Shohei Ohtani, on waivers, which could create chaos in the playoff race. The Rangers certainly would be interested in Matt Moore, the reliever who pitched for them last year really well. Could have some interest in Lucas Giolito, could have some interest in outfielder Hunter Renfroe. They have the tools to go out and add these guys, because the waiver price, really the only cost here, or the only risk for anybody in making a claim on these guys, is you have to be prepared to pick up the remainder of their salaries. And on all these guys, you're talking about $1 million to, well, somewhere between $500,000 remaining to $1.7 million or so for the remainder of the season. And so if you're willing to continue to pay the luxury tax, and every indicator I've gotten from the Rangers is that they would consider adding more payroll to further reinforce this team. And listen, once you spent $233 million or so, which is where the Rangers are at, certainly no time with the playoff race very much in question, to say, we'll bypass on this. So I think that they will put in a claim or two for these players. I think the question is whether or not any of those players actually get to the Rangers. a reliever like Matt Moore is going to be interesting to clubs that are in the playoff hunt. And the bottom line here is teams that are on the outside looking in or below the Rangers, and those teams vary from San Francisco to Arizona to Toronto to even Boston. All those teams could look at every one of these players, and they all would have a higher waiver priority than the Rangers do. So Rangers could put in claims for as many of these guys as they want and end up with none of them. The risk, however, is let's say the Rangers did put in claims for all 5 guys, and they all 5 got to the Rangers. They're stuck with those contracts, and they then would have to make roster space for them. So that would play real havoc with your 40-man roster. I think this team could add 1, maybe it could add 2 if those guys get to them. But you're certainly not just going to put in broad waiver claims for everybody. For a team that struggled in the bullpen, Matt Moore is a great fit. Pitched here, pitched well. Liked it here, wanted to come back. Think that, the contract demands were a little bit more than the Rangers were willing to spend at that point in time because they had starting pitching more on the mind. But certainly Matt Moore, who I think is making, I think there's about $1.1 million or so left in his contract for the remainder of the year. Certainly that would be a worthwhile option for the Rangers to explore. Renfroe not had a great year in the outfield, but he does have big time power and the bat that can win you a game with one swing. Giolito obviously has not pitched well since going over from the White Sox to the Angels, but he is he's a productive starter. And I think of the 3, I think it's the least priority for the Rangers right now. I think reinforcing the bullpen and potentially giving them another option on the bench that could help them as a late game piece would make some sense. There were other teams that followed the Angels' lead, but not to the same extent that the Angels did. I think the Yankees placed Harrison Bader on waivers. Chicago placed Mike Clevenger on waivers. That was pretty much the group. I'm leaving one player out. I apologize. We'll see what happens there. The waiver claims end as we're speaking Wednesday night. The Rangers will find out if they've been awarded any of these players, if they put in for any of them on Thursday, and those players, if they are claimed, would be eligible for the playoff roster because they would be acquired before September 1st. So that's a little bit interesting. The other thing I wanted to bring up today was something that got mentioned very briefly at the end of last night or Tuesday night's game, was that Marcus Semien had kind of challenged his teammates during their offensive slump to play small ball or to be able to play small ball when the situation needed. Mitch Garver singled that out last night as a I don't want to say turning point for this team. I don't want to go that far, but it's something that resonated with the team. And listen, that took place on Monday night or Monday afternoon when they got to New York. And since they got to New York, Rangers have won back-to-back games with 9th-inning hits that were not home runs. 2-run single by Nathaniel Lowe on Monday. Big single by Ezekiel Duran on Tuesday. Big hits that were not home runs. And what Marcus said to this team was, if you can win some games here, if you can do the things to win games and win some games without home runs, you're going to be great because they are going to hit home runs. I think his point was just basically, look, we need to execute, as I wrote in my column, which also is available online right now. Took a page from his old mentor, Ron Washington's book, do what the game asks you to do. If the situation calls for getting the ball to the right side, do it. If the situation calls for tagging up, do it. The Rangers had gotten away from some of that, I think, in their 10-game streak, and it was a lot of young players making a lot of mistakes. Duran failed to tag up in a situation that should have been an easy tag and didn't advance to third base in a situation that would have preceded what would have turned out to be a sacrifice fly. Leody Taveras tried to steal third with Corey Seager up and no outs. Just a really bad move. Really bad move to try and steal with the American League's maybe most productive hitter at the plate. But these are the things that young players do, and it's the kind of challenge that teams that are trying to find what Ian Kinsler called on the radio last week, championship DNA. It's kind of the last thing for them to find, and it only makes sense because you can't win a pennant race until you're in a pennant race, and you can't have a pennant race until you're late into the season. And here the Rangers are going into September, playing meaningful baseball against two teams that have both been, or racing against two teams that have both been to the playoffs together. Obviously, the Astros multiple times. Seattle got its stuff together after playing well in 2021. Really took another step forward in 2022, and have played incredible baseball for the last month. Of course, they're way from 10 games back in the American League West into a tie for first, and they held first by a game for a single day. So those teams have gotten over that hump, and the Rangers are facing that right now. And I think it's significant. And I think that's why I think the wins the last few nights, as I record this, were really important. Rangers have been 0-47 when trailing after 8 innings. You don't expect a team to win a lot of games when they're trailing after 8 innings. It's hard to beat other teams' closers. But what you do expect is for good teams to occasionally win those games. Is that once a month, once every 2 months? Certainly not in any season. And the Rangers were bad in those games last year. There are some players here. There are a lot of players here who are carried over from last year. They had gone 0-47 before Monday night. They needed to win a game like that. They needed to win the game Tuesday night the way they did, which was to add an important ninth inning run and win a close game. Winning games late is kind of the style in which playoff games are won. And so the Rangers have got to get comfortable with executing in big situations. They're not going to bludgeon opponents should they make the playoffs. They are going to have to do what the game asks them to do what the situation asks them to do. And I think the most encouraging thing about the last couple of nights was that in those big situations, the Rangers just did just that. Without big swings, without big home runs, they delivered the hits they needed to deliver in order to capitalize on some very important run-scoring situations. And as a result, they won back-to-back games, both by 1 run, both on the road. It's the first time they've won consecutive one-run games on the road since 2017. It's been a while. Bruce Bochy said he hopes that can gain him a little bit of momentum, and I think it can. But he also said that momentum doesn't necessarily show up with going out and just steamrolling opponents or boat racing them, which I believe I called motorboating at one point in time this year because I'm a moron. I'm drinking water too. We're comfortable with one another, and I'm parched. It's hot in New York. But the momentum also can be gained from winning close games with big hits late, perhaps just as much, if not more so. And so the Rangers did that, and I think there was a palpable difference in this team's approach on Monday and Tuesday late in the games. All right, that's it here from New York. That's going to do it for this week. I wish I had a witty send-off. I had a bagel. I was going to record with a bagel this morning, but I got tied up doing something to try and sort through those playoff races. But I had a delicious bagel. My wife is coming in for the weekend in New York, so we're going to have a fine time here in the city. And I will be back with you for the start of that 3-game series against Houston at Globe Life Field. There are some good tickets still remaining, I am told. Though I don't think there's much, if anything. I'm trying to check my ticket availability thing here. All reserved seats have been sold for Monday. There are only standing room seats left. Tuesday, plenty of good seats available. Wednesday, less than 4,000 reserved seats. So if you're planning to go, now's the time to snap up those tickets. All right, everybody. I am going to clap my hands, wave wildly, gesture wildly, and say so long until next week. I'll have a food report for you next week. The wife and I plan to eat our way through New York City. We're also going to go to a Sinatra themed night one night. My wife is a big Sinatra. She loves her some Sinatra. So we're going to do that. And we'll report back on all that stuff along with first week of September and more playoff race drama. Till then, peace out. This is good video.